everyone, and how are you doing today? We have a great panel discussion coming up here. It is the Say What? A common language and a single source of truth across the enterprise. And we're going to be talking about how you just can't rely on intuition anymore or autopsy analysis of raw data. Staying competitive and driving digital transformation forward means that it's very critical, both on the factory floor and in the front of the house, that everybody is working from the same shared place to analyze results, connect systems, improve efficiency, and drive growth. So I want to welcome our panelists today, and first and foremost, thank Litmus for having us here today. I want to take just a couple minutes for each panelist to introduce yourselves and the company that you're working for, and give you like 30 seconds to do your shameless plugs. I know that we're not really supposed to do that, but hey, we gotta let people know what we're doing and what our companies do to help our customers. So let's start off with Jason. Give us your name, what you're doing, and what your company is.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing? My name is Jason Nassar. I work for Dell Technologies. I'm sure you're all aware of who Dell Technologies is. I work out of Houston, Texas. My job is to lead the manufacturing strategy for the edge. And so what we do at Dell is we actually develop end-to-end productized solutions. Litmus is an excellent partner of ours, and they were part of our first solution set that we released 2 years ago.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
I can go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we sure can.
Okay. Hi, this is Ganesh Hegde. I'm part of Cloudera. I'm the managing director of industry solutions, focusing on manufacturing, automotive, and industrials. Those are the industry verticals I do focus on. And as far as the Cloudera is concerned, Cloudera is a hybrid data platform company which helps the customers to do the end-to-end data lifecycle management. I mean, it's starting from data streaming, getting the data streaming, and streaming analytics, and so-called the ETL, right? I mean, ETL, when I say like a data engineering, transformation of the data, and data harmonization, or normalization of the data, and with the streaming analytics, and storing the data in a kind of a data lake, and also providing analytic capabilities like machine learning and the AI and the next generation things like supporting LLM and generative AI kind of stuff. So basically, it's an end-to-end data management platform, and it is a hybrid platform.
Awesome. Saranjita, do you want to go next?
Absolutely. Hi, Megan. Really a pleasure to be a part of this awesome panel. I'm Saranjita Chaudhary. I head the product marketing and industrial relations at Litmus. Our mission really is to make industrial IoT accessible to all, which means helping doers and dreamers what they need to do with their data to be successful in implementing anything around Industry 4.0. So that's who we are.
And finally, but not least, Gilad, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Gilad Langer. I work for Tulip. Tulip is a frontline operations platform, basically a no-code platform that allows you to very rapidly digitize your manufacturing or production operations to take you into this new digital era. I am the industry practice lead. Tulip, I'm responsible for all our customer services and our collective know-how and expertise around manufacturing systems and digitizing Industry 4.0. I'm an industry veteran. I've been doing this for over 28 years in a number of industrial verticals. And thank you very much for having me, by the way.
Absolutely. And my name is Megan Zimba. I'm the host of Mavens of Manufacturing. I will be moderating this conversation. So my job here is not to talk very much at all, but just to keep the conversation going. I see that we have a lot of participants joining the live session. Feel free to drop your questions or comments in the chat. This conversation is to engage all of you in the audience. So we definitely have a list of questions, but feel free to drop your questions in as well, because I would rather have your questions get answered from the subject matter experts. So don't be shy. This isn't high school. You don't have to raise your hand or anything. You can just drop them right there in the chat. So to get started, the shop floor is booming now with all of the automation solutions that we have. And there's a lot of data that people can collect now. And my first question to all of you is, what data is really important? Like, what should we focus on the most, and what sort of data do we need to help drive business success? Saranjita, do you want to start off with this conversation?
Sure. I mean, it really starts at the plant floor, like you pointed out, right? And it starts from being able to connect everything that you have on the plant floor. And it could be like legacy systems that you have, state-of-the-art machines, custom machines that you have, being able to really untap the data that's locked in those machines in the first place. That's where you get started. And from there on, the possibilities are endless. Like, start from your machine data to knowing how many parts you're producing, any defects, the number, the time taken, identifying the problem with those machines. How could you improve the efficiency around them? How could you reduce scrape? Then there is operational data, like, you're talking about the operator being concerned about the efficiency, any worker training, any tribal knowledge that's trapped in their brains, quality data for that matter, inventory data, order data, and the list goes on. So it's really endless possibilities once you start unlocking the data potential.
How about you, Jason?
Yeah, I would add to that. I think that's an excellent answer. First off, I mean, these old systems on the factory floor, the data really isn't tapped into. We've been talking about Industry 4.0 for a long time. I actually finally feel like companies are actually implementing it. But you have to take it a step further, right? Because you also have warehouses that need to be managed. You have logistics that need to be managed. Many of these companies are end to end, and they're not just producing a product. They also have a retail end at the very end of it. And so ultimately, if you could take all that data and work, and it can work with each other in a harmonized way, that's really when you're going to achieve this nirvana state where everything's actually working together. Very few companies, if any, have actually achieved it, but that's the huge opportunity that's right in front of us.
How about Jawad? Or
Yeah. So, this is a question that's not new, and I think you have to consider that the question is, why do we ask that question? Is because typically we'll say, well, it's hard for us to get the data, and it's expensive. It was expensive to house the data and manage the data. And that is not the case anymore with new digital technology. So the real answer is all of it. And because the fact that you're trying to get all of it is core to digitally transforming, right? If you take a look at digital technology that we use in our everyday life, right? The power of it is not that we know a single data point or a single parameter or a single set of parameters. Is we know a parameter, let's say the temperature in your home, but we also know everything around it. What time of day it is, who was in the house, what machines were running, what devices were running in the house. All that put together gives us insights that we never had before. Now, if you take a look at the power of Google and Facebook and all these, that's what they do. They have a wealth of data that they can start looking at trends, and they can, even better than we can, tell us predict what are some of the behaviors that we are going to see. In manufacturing, we're stingy about data. Like, oh, we just want this data because we need to put it in this server and it's going to cost us, etc. We have to forget all of that when we move into this new industrial age, right? That is the core of it. We need those insights. So when you look at, and there's so much low-hanging fruit. When we go to any manufacturing plant, there is so much paper, and there's just so much manual and Excel and everything. So I would say, don't think about what data is more important. Just start to digitize. If you can, put anything you can into digital means, so you have now digital data about what's going on, and you don't have to think about where to start. Just choose something and start. You will naturally gravitate to your more important lines, to your more important processes, where you have more value, etc. But just start collecting as much data as you can, put it in the cloud. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And with that, you'll get the insights. We need to get past that mental hurdle of thinking which data is not important. Just forget about it. Just move, start digitizing, put everything into the cloud, into data lakes, into whatever platform that is of your choice, and start looking at that data and gaining insights.
Anish, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. I mean, I think I agree with all the points that have been made with other folks over here. It's it's not that what data is important. I mean, I think it's all the data that is manufacturing related are critical, and it is important, right? You can categorize broadly into about three or four categories, right? I mean, the process data, which is all related to the process. When they develop a product, they develop the process along with it. How do you manufacture these things, right? The processes can deviate over time in the manufacturing. So they getting that process data, monitoring that process data, and the product related data. I mean, when you are you producing the product according to the spec, as defined during the product development. So you got to collect the product data as well. Then the asset centric data. I mean, is the asset is healthy? I mean, if there is by impact to the process or the product from the asset equipment perspective, right? And of course the people. I mean, in order to be more efficient, you have to collect, monitor, the data related to the people. So it's not that what data is important, but it is you have the data. The extensive amount of data is collected today, but the thing is that this data is all in silos kind of a thing within the organization. Like maintenance data is in their own vertical, within the organization, the quality data it's in their own vertical. So the question is, how do we bring all these things together, right? I mean, and not only that, I mean, contextualizing this data to drive the business. You need to add the context. I mean, contextualize this data with additional information that comes from other part of the businesses, like if you're collecting a data per temperature and pressure and that kind of a data, if there is a deviation, to understand which product it has impacted. I mean, you need to go into the MES data, right? Or which lot or which process order or which production order it impacted or came from. You need to go have the ERP, but the data from the ERP. So there is an interrelations in all these things. So if you want to drive the business to the next level, not only within the factory, but across the factory, you have to bring all this data together, so-called the IT/OT convergence, right? And not only that, I mean, you got to bring it on a common platform, so that everybody sees the same data across the board, like a one version of the truth kind of a thing, single but data lake across the enterprise. So those are the kind of critical things. Then you apply analytics and do the digital transformation. You can do it by use case based, or one use case after the other kind of a thing based on the priorities. So I think those are the critical things. It's not that what data is important. I think all the data that is collected is important, but how do you take them, put these things together and get the information out of it and provide those insights that is critical.
I think we should dive a little bit deeper in that too, because as you mentioned, there's all different kinds of data, and depending on who's viewing that information, I think that priority is going to change depending on who the individual is on the shop floor. So what data goes beyond the shop floor, to whom, how is it getting collected by these individuals, and what are some of the pros and cons within that process? Jason, do you want to start this off?
Yeah, I can start off. So, the first thing that I want to mention is really going beyond the shop floor. You got to think about the whole entire company, and you got to kind of think about the edge in general. So what do I mean by the edge? I mean, you got to think about the edge is anything besides the data center or the cloud. We know there are servers in the cloud that are doing all this powerful compute work for us, and we send a lot of information to the cloud. But a factory floor is not always going to want to do that. In fact, many times they won't. They have very proprietary information that they're concerned about, and they want to be isolated from that situation. It's the same thing with the data center, right? I mean, you have latency issues when it comes to connecting to the data center. You can do a lot of processing, which is amazing. At the end of the day, you're really in an unsecure situation when you're sending your data over there, and it'll be very slow. It could lag. So you look at a factory floor, what do you have? You have PCs that are all over the place. They might have HMIs, human machine interfaces, graphic user interfaces. They might have proprietary software on them. You'll have gateways, which are essentially PCs that are collecting that data and basically transforming and normalizing that data using software like Litmus or several other convergence platforms. And then you move one step further, you will also have something very similar in a retail situation, right? You'll have computers that are doing point of sales transactions, but then you'll have a completely different compute system that is being utilized for the surveillance from a loss prevention perspective and a security perspective. So, going beyond just the shop floor and thinking about people, what is actually needed is a way to manage and orchestrate all these devices throughout a company end to end that are at the edge. And so, we've been focusing on that at Dell at the end of the day, really with a platform that we call Native Edge, but that'll allow us to deploy to whatever edge it is, whatever infrastructure it is, with zero touch and no provisioning, with a very high level of security, any software that a company would be using. And it's really revolutionary at the end of the day. And it doesn't just think about the manufacturing floor. It thinks about the retail space, a smart city space, a medical field, whatever the edge is, ultimately. You could create blueprints for all the software packages that you have. So that way you can make sure that you're deploying exactly what your customers are needing. And this is what we find all of our customers are asking for it. They have too many disparate systems. There's no way to control and manage it, at least not in a secure way. And so we're trying to solve that problem.
I think that's a great segue into a question that just came in. Brian Sawyer wanted to know, how do you secure control access to the data once it is centralized? So Jason, do you have anything else to add on that, or does someone else in the panel want to help answer that question for Brian?
Yeah, I mean, I could add real quick. So ultimately, the devices have their own signature from Dell ultimately. So when they're deployed, they are secure by nature. So they will come out of the factory already ready for this. And that's really what it is at the end of the day. So the only way that you can send software to it or access any of the IO ports on the device is through the Native Edge operating platform itself. That's a good question.
Ranjita, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say security, when you think about security, it's not just about when you have centralized the data, right? Security is something that cannot be an afterthought when you're talking industrial IoT implementation. It starts right from your data collection process all the way to data analysis, and like when you are integrating with cloud, and the journey has to be all throughout. So at least at Litmus, the way we do it is security has been part of the platform architecture, the platform design itself right from day one. It wasn't an afterthought, like I said. And we are a Linux-based modern platform, so which kind of makes it easier for our customers, for example, to avoid any Windows or Java introduced vulnerabilities in the first place. The architecture in its own way, like being a pub sub architecture, you kind of like you manage, and there are modern authentication ways to manage those kind of security, potential security gaps that you might have in any kind of like message exchanges that happen between these devices and the systems. We also start with an offline first mode, which basically means that you take a step-by-step approach in implementing your industrial IoT vision. You start offline first, you're not connected to the internet, you try it, test out, having sufficient time to ensure that everything is working smoothly, there are no disruptions, and you create basically a secure abstraction layer to cloud. Because at the end of the day, cloud is an important part of this journey, and you want to make sure that, the edge and the cloud work together in unison to enable the Industry 4.0 vision that we have been talking about for at least over a decade now. And then having those corporate policies and the basic governance in place is an extremely critical part. So appropriate authentication, approval system, role-based access, all these kind of things. There are like a myriad of things that come in. And, you know, most importantly, it is critical to understand that operational technology assets, they need a very different kind of security than IT. But it's when we talk about IT-OT convergence, we've got to talk about them in unison and be able to address both fronts where you need both OT expertise and IT expertise to make sure that you do not end up expanding the security threat landscape as you embark on your digitization journey. That's what I would, that's been the approach that we take at Litmus.
That's been a topic in other conversations too during this summit is, how do you get IT to collaborate with OT and not have them so siloed? Do any of you have any insights on where companies can start that process, where they can start thinking that as a singular strategy instead of having them separate strategies?
Yeah, I can try and respond to that, but before that, I want to take us just a step back to the questions like what kind of data. We talked about this. It's everybody goes towards the more technical data that's available, connecting to automation machines. We have to remember that there is still a very, very critical part of the edge. It's called a human. The human operator is out there, and we don't know what is going on, what he does, if we don't get understand what's going on. So in any given manufacturing shop floor, there are humans. Humans interact with systems. We need to know what they're doing, and we need to give them an opportunity to also enter the data and tell us where we're going, because without that, our view of what's going on in manufacturing is very siloed and very, it's actually not complete. And without that, we will never be able to achieve the productivity gains from digital technologies. So that's kind of on the side. So the way I look at IT-OT convergence is that and I have a few anecdotes just to emphasize this. Maybe it's more, it may scare some people, but in any kind of any kind of industrial revolution, go to steam, to electricity, and so on, some things become obsolete. When electricity came around in the Industrial Revolution, every plant had an electricity manager. There was a person who was responsible for that technology. The parallel today is this, who is in charge of digital technology. We're moving to everything as a service. That means that you're not going to rely on internal resources to manage some of the things. Nobody thinks about, the electricity gets from the plug in the wall. It's just something you pay for. And that is where some of these technologies are going. So the IT-OT convergence really is about IT role is completely changing, and their role in everyday operations of what happens in the plant is diminishing. And that's key to it. So it's not really IT-OT convergence. It's really IT's role is diminishing. OT's role is becoming, as these systems become more democratized. We talk about citizen development and all this great stuff. That is, think about Uber and Lyft. Once there was a dispatch for taxis. You had to call a number to dispatch a taxi. Who in their right mind today will even think about that? It's gone. We will see some of the same behavior. We'll see some of the same trends in industry as well.
Jason, I see you writing notes down on that. Do you have anything to add to that?
I just find it a little interesting. Maybe we have to have a debate.
That's part of it, right?
For the IT.
That's part of the panel discussion.
So ultimately, I actually see them merging the OT and the IT more than IT's role diminishing. And I think they both have a lot of strengths, but you will notice a lot of the OT companies, and I don't want to mention their names because there'll be shameless plugs for some big companies that we already know who they are. But what are they doing? They're developing industrialized PCs. They're developing soft PLC controllers. They're combining the IT and the OT. Some of what they are not able to do at scale, like IT companies, is manage and orchestrate and deploy at scale at a very large size. So what I see is these companies, these IT and these OT companies, and Dell's doing this quite a bit right now, actually merging from a partnership perspective and getting the job accomplished. And that can happen directly where, for example, people clearly see Dell all over their factory floor, or it happens from an OEM perspective where you don't even know that you're receiving something that was previously Dell because it might have one of those big OT names on it because it's been rebranded. But definitely there's a merge of those two ways of thinking.
How about you, Ganesh? You're smiling down there. I see
Yeah,
that your
I'm
ears
kind of
turning.
listening to both the conversations over here. But I sort of agree with, in a way, with Jason on the IT's role over, right? I mean, I don't see before, but it was a long time back. I have been in the industry for too long, I guess. But before IT used to be a back office, this thing, the back office support kind of a stuff. And that is changed. Now it is evolving more and more. I mean, I think that the IT's role is evolving rather than diminishing or so by the way if you take it by, I mean, of course, I mean, we can look at the different industries. If you take like automotive industry, right? Our automotive industry, it's becoming more and more like a software-defined vehicle and those kind of things. But the role of IT is changing. I mean, there's a lot of software goes into the car itself, so they can influence the product. They can, generate the revenue, providing as a service to the customers, right? I mean, so the role is kind of evolving within the IT. I think the question was, how do we bring all these things together? I mean, not from the system perspective. Technology, you can always bring them together. The technologies are there. I mean, IT OT convergence. The challenge has always been the culture and the organization, right? How do we bring, because the OTs typically they don't talk to IT. They think that they are technology guys, data guys, and the infrastructure guys. But I think, as I said, IT is kind of evolving into more business driven, in the sense, they do influence the business. They do influence the bottom line. They do influence the top line growth. So given that, I think if you start looking at from the business strategy perspective, hey, this is where the operations people need to go, where the challenges are, whether the OEE is a challenge or the product quality is a challenge, where the challenge is, where do they what is their roadmap, what are their priorities, and then align, but then look at the technology. How do we solve those problems from the technology angle of it? Then they do understand. I mean, because but then it's kind of collectively you're solving a problem, not that we are just giving the technology and they run away with the technology kind of a thing. That typically helps. I mean, that from bringing the culture of the organizations together to solve a common problem, and technology, by leveraging the technology, leveraging the data, and then come up with a plan on how do we solve this, the business problem, whether it is including the data being collected through the edge, putting it on a data lake or a common platform, and how do we analyze these things, and harmonizing or normalizing the data kind of a stuff. So I think that is but as I said, the IT role is kind of evolving, going into the next generation kind of technologies, along with even with the OT, right? I mean, OT, but as I said, the software new functionalities are being put into the product itself, and the operations people need to understand different newer technologies. So their role is also kind of evolving, and with all this complexity, manufacturing operations also becoming more complex. So it's becoming everybody is kind of evolving together in order to address some of the digital transformation that is happening in the industry.
So how do we get to that point where we can set up these clear communication channels effectively so that everybody can understand the importance of coming together? Because I feel like, you know, not a lot of people understand the jargon that's involved with this, and they're not going to understand maybe why they have to have certain data or information to make their jobs more effective. So where do we start? How do we make this process easier for people and change that culture?
Okay, so first of all, you know, in any kind of culture, in any kind of change, we have to realize that there's a change. I think the problem in the industry is that not everybody realizes there's a change, and there's also quite a lot of skeptics, people that don't believe that this is much more than just another iteration of what we know as, I call it Industry 3.0, but traditional, right? So, and by the way, the vendors and suppliers and, you know, in this space are not helping, you know, they're actually helping in the confusion, because everybody that has some kind of software system is immediately marketing it as Industry 4.0. And, you know, poor people at the plants are looking at this and saying, what do I need? It's easier to go to the establishment that brands it themselves as Industry 4.0 versus the new entrants, startups that are providing new technology. But again, there's also startups that are providing old technologies in new bottles. It's really complicated. There's confusion all the way around. Obviously, as time goes by, the emergence of the true technologies that are able to take us into this new era will shine. But at this point, it's very complicated. I would say I have a few very simple rules to determine whether, you know, is there a change or not. First of all, it has to do with order of magnitude productivity gain. New technology, if we look at the revolutions before, it meant that it's a step change. It's not single digit, it's double, triple digit changes in productivity. And if you look at the technology and it gives you that, that means that there's a change happening and you cannot ignore it. So that's the quickest way to, if you will, silence the skeptics, but also a quick way to get, you know, to understand whether you are able to change or not.
No, those are all good points. I've seen a massive change over the last couple of years, but really the last 6 to 8 months. And really, I think that's been ignited by what we're all aware of, which is ChatGPT came out, and everybody's not just saying AI, they actually understand what it is because they've utilized it and they've touched it now. And so I think that is merging this whole IT and this OT and bringing, you know, opening up the mind of the OT persona, because they recognize, holy smokes, I can get through college using this software right now, as long as my professor doesn't know about it. What could this do for my factory floor to make it better? And the answer is obviously whatever you can imagine. It's pretty remarkable. And so seeing is believing, and that's the phase that we're at right now with artificial intelligence and machine learning. And that's not going to come from the OT side. That's going to come from the IT side working with the OT side.
Saranjita,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'll just, you know, like to add, I think there was this fantastic study from Gartner which said, you know, the journey that happens from data being raw data till it becomes contextualized data, enriched with metadata and information, is what takes data from being a low value asset to a very high value asset for an organization. And I think that's where I would say what kind of data it answers. It's not what kind of data. Adding more context to the data is what makes it actionable, more valuable to an organization. And that's why more data is good. What you could do out of the data as soon as possible is important. How well you could analyze it, it really empowers, which means that not just real-time data, you also need some context with historical data. So being able to do both together is equally important. And so again, coming back to the first question, right? What data is important? It could be the same piece of data that everyone is looking at, but as you continue to add more context, more relevance, historical and real-time analytics into it, that whole piece of data could be something which is way more valuable. And I think that's where the IT and the OT thing comes in together as well, because as you see, like an operational plant manager could be looking at the same piece of data, and that could provide insights into how that data is really affecting your bottom line for a business leader as well. So I think it's a journey. It continues to be a journey, and data is that journey that we need to, as a platform, need to ensure that the data journey helps organizations in their digital transformation journey as well, in their data maturity journey as well. All of that comes together, I think. So that's important too.
You're so right. But think about the complexity of that, integrating all those different data sources and then actually trying to get outcomes out of it. It takes very large teams to figure this out. I mean, even the data is confusing when you look at it, even if you understand it, because you're talking over so many different protocols at the end of the day. And they're different speeds and they have different levels of relevance. But this artificial intelligence and machine learning, I mean, we're getting to a point where very soon we're going to be able to run all of that data through a machine and it's going to spit out everything that's relevant. And all you're going to have to do is look at the reports at the end of the day.
Yeah.
That's revolutionizing everything.
That's the next
Barry,
one. Go ahead, sorry.
Barry Brooks, a great point. Vanti has just released an ML AI application that leverages generative AI to a customer's manufacturing data. So is that like the only place or opportunity to stay competitive? Like Jason, you just mentioned that some of these larger companies are going to be able to do that, but what about smaller companies? What are the other opportunities for them to stay competitive and ahead of other businesses?
Yeah, I don't think it's just large companies. I do think that it's small companies because at the end of the day, AI is moving so fast. There are plugins that are being created for it at this moment, which basically means applications. And it's not going to take tens of millions of dollars to actually apply it to your own operation, even if you're a small company. In fact, it's probably going to be in the tens to hundreds of dollars.
Jawad, what did you have to say? Because I kind of talked over you.
No, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I think the smaller companies are quicker to adopt in general this new technology. So they are actually in natively or inherently are going to be more competitive because they are able to disrupt and move faster. Again, remember that order of magnitude productivity gain. That's where disruption comes from. They're going to be so much more efficient in what they do that they're going to disrupt the bigger companies within their space if that's the case. But I think one of the things that is really important with this generative AI or generative AI, in terms of big data. I mean, there's applications across the board for AI ML. Generative AI is just one thing. There's just so many other things to this. But remember that one of the things we've been struggling with in the past is this overall view into the data that we have about manufacturing. Way back in the 80s, we had this concept called SIM, computer integrated manufacturing, which even at the time had this idea of a central view into all data of a manufacturing plant, which we've tried to do in what's the 80s, like we're talking 40 years ago, and we have not been able to. Even with technology, it is impossible to come up with one unique view for everybody about what goes into the plant. There's systems around master data management and all this great stuff, and people spend days and weeks, and some companies even have whole teams to try to make this standardized model of what we do in a plant. When you bring in these types of AI ML tools, you don't have to worry about it, because this is really, in a way, we don't need a central data model. In another perspective, it actually gives us. It's able to go in and find the context that we're missing and provide insights that we couldn't get before. And again, back to what I said initially when I started. In order to feed these, in order for AI to really work, you need a lot of data. It needs to be nuanced, it has to be varied, and it has to have different volumes. So just start collecting data. At this point, when somebody asks, like, should I use, what is that for? In the beginning, just start collecting data. Remember the human aspect of it, collect data from humans as well. Start building your data set so you can really, truly start, getting the insights from some of these excellent tools.
Anish, what do you have to add to that?
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion, right? I mean, but with the generative AI and large language model that has come out, and everybody is talking about it. My approach is, I mean, don't look at just from the technology angle of it, technology perspective. What does it provide to the business? What should be the business outcome? There are use cases where you don't need generative AI or ML or LLM kind of a stuff, right? We got to look at from the business perspective. For example, in the predictive maintenance, I think to understand the things that are involved in a particular asset or set of assets, the genealogy that is involved with an asset, but generative AI or by LLM or chat GPT kind of technologies does help, right? I mean, look at from the use cases angle of it, and that then we'll have the technology discussions kind of a stuff. And I think we were talking about the change as well, right? I mean, to be competitive in the market space. I mean, you gotta be. I mean, change is inevitable these days in the sense, but the whole business is becoming more and more customer centric, right? Customer centricity. Customer is the one who will drive the change, or the market. That's what they say, right? I mean, the businesses can sit idle, but the market sometimes they drive the inevitable change that needs to happen. Right, but the customers are looking for newer products, newer newer things at the best cost. How do you do those kind of things? So I cab, but the change I cab, the people who are in the driver's seat kind of a thing, the manufacturing companies, they are the ones who is focusing on innovation, efficiency, and resiliency, right? If you look at the innovation, you need to understand what is happening in the customer base, bring those requirements or bring those changes into the product development, like things like digital twin, that is enabling them to do it in a much faster way, instead of going back and forth between manufacturing and product development, right? So by the digital twin and those kind of technologies and the AI and ML is enabling them to do that. And resiliency as well, right? I mean, the manufacturing plants need to be resilient and agile to what happens with the way in the customer base, or what is happening with the customers. The demand can take a tank in another week, right? How do you adjust your capacity? I mean, how do you adjust your manufacturing lines? And so the sharing the data with other your along your supplier, I mean, along your value chain, not only your value chain, but the extended value chain, right? External suppliers, the component suppliers, and even these days there are a lot of software that goes into the product as well, the software providers. And be sharing that data and having that collaborative platform, having that kind of a common data platform across the value chain is very, very critical. And those are the kind of companies I think they'll do. They invest and they'll do well as well and be competitive.
Companies that can get ahead of some of their competitors.
It was hard to hear you, Megan.
Megan,
Yeah,
I think you broke
Megan.
up, or I'm not sure if it was my internet. I
I
apologize.
think
I think she broke up.
Was it
Can you
mine?
repeat your question, Megan?
Yeah, I was curious if she had any other thing to add to that, or to companies to kind of some of their.
I think you're breaking up.
Yeah, it's still breaking up, but I think I get the gist of the question. I think we are looking for other other competitive drivers, and I think at this point I would say, like, there could be different kind of drivers, right? There are cyber physical systems, there's big data, and then you're talking about cloud technologies. But everything, if you think, they all come down to one common denominator, which is data. Right. And it's about embracing data as that growth lever. I think we are at that phase. Manufacturing as an industry is at that inflection point where if we don't make that stride now, we are going to miss the bus yet again. So I think that's very important. And as vendors or technology providers and as important parts of this entire ecosystem. It's a role that we have to play to, reduce the confusion that exists among what could be done. And I think Gilad earlier in his conversation said that, a lot of times the vendors add to that confusion. So I think that's a very important thing that we have to start doing to help ourselves as well, along with our customers, that, help remove that fog about what we do and what capabilities we bring as a product or as a platform. So, I mean, the approach that we always try to do at Litmus is we try to meet wherever our customers are in their journey of digital transformation. What that means is, first of all, start with a simple single platform that solves their needs, and then enable them to do more, to continue to innovate. And that could be like making it very easy for them to bring their self-developed apps, AI apps, ML apps, anything that they have. Bring your containerized application, run it out of the same platform, which just means that these innovations then start feeding right into your systems, your OT floors, your IT teams, your data scientists, your chief data officer. Everyone can plug into those benefits and then build on top of it. So it is about simplifying what manufacturing customers are trying to do, and probably like avoiding multiple SKUs is one way to think about it, like consolidating them into one platform, making it easy, shortening the learning curve. All of these will come together and play a part as we try to help our customers do more with their data as well. So those would be my thoughts.
We get ready to close out this because we're I want to hear about some of the security, transparency, and what are some of those risks?
Megan, I'm not sure. We couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Your audio is breaking up, but not your video. So I don't know if
That
your
is
microphone's
weird.
You may want to change it. Yeah.
Here. One second. Got love stuff, right?
Still breaking up.
Okay, let me type it in here.
Only word I could hear was customer stories. Is that?
Yeah, I think so.
Hold on, let me type it in here. There we go.
Customer.
Yeah, and I think we can hear you right now if you made a change at the moment, at least.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it loud? Awesome. All right. Live conversations. Gotta love them.
Okay.
So where are you seeing the transparency where data is being leveraged for better operational results, and what are some of those results?
I here would like to quote one of our customers, and which was pretty interesting. They said they just saw a 28-year reversal, which basically meant that instead of spending 80% of the time trying to figure out their problems, they were spending like 20% on solving them. Now it's the other way around, which is huge, which is not just huge for the plant operator, which is not just huge for the machine operator and people who are on the shop floor dealing with those machines and everything around it. It's huge for the business decision makers as well, because you're literally looking at improved throughput, you're looking at reduced scrape rate, and a lot of good things that come along with it. So I think this is just one example out of many who have leveraged data and have seen results, quantifiable results, which is important to Gilad's point once again, right? To be able to quantify what you have achieved from the data, what you have actually done with the data, it is a great step in that right direction.
So, the idea of success stories really is broad, and there's a lot of it. I think what you see, if you want to talk success, is the speed that by which you get insights. Most of coming from Tulip, most of our success stories is about combining data from automation with human interaction. So the speed by which you can take data from automation that we've been plugging into for decades, and then augment that or supplement that with real-time information from operators. So give an example, machine goes down, I prompt the operator, hey, the machine is down, give me a reason code, take a picture of what's going on. I'm starting to collect data about it. You can do that in a matter of hours. You can gain insights in a matter of weeks, and you're starting to affect productivity within that number of weeks period. And most of our customers, we actually, as a goal, try to show value within a matter of 3 to 4 weeks if we're able to. And we have plenty of success stories, and most of them are on our website. There's plenty of webinars and podcasts and what have you of that information. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I can probably provide some customer stories, I guess. I mean, from Cloudera perspective, we work with various types of customers in various industries, discrete as well as process manufacturing, and they have seen anywhere between the 20 to 50% yield improvement from where where they were, right, and reducing the manufacturing test times and those kind of things pretty extensively, leveraging the data. And for example, there is one tire manufacturing company or the customer in Europe, right? I mean, they came up with we of course leveraging the data, we built a digital twin of the process itself, manufacturing process, and then they leverage the external data like the temperature, the weather data, and the road conditions, where the customers are using their product, right, and also having the real-time process data from the manufacturing plants. By combining all that data with the digital twin, they were able to enhance their product or the product design as well as by manufacturing process itself, looking into the road conditions and the weather and those kind of things. So I think that's bringing that whole set of data, like so-called the big data. Not only you are getting this customer was getting the structured data from the manufacturing plants or semi-structured data, so-called the sensor data, but also unstructured data like a weather and those kind of things, and putting that one in a common platform, it provides a more comprehensive insights. And they were able to come up with a newer product in and help the customers as well. And there is another customer story which is a medical device manufacturer, right? And they were having a lot of scrap, so they had to automate the process, and they were monitor these things in a real time, in a continuous fashion, the equipments, and apply real time. Like a SPC, upper limit, lower limit kind of a thing on the streaming data. And as they see issues, they were able to put the equipment down, and so that the material doesn't go waste or the components doesn't go waste, right? So they were able to reduce the scrap enormously as well. I mean, those are the few examples, but but as I said, we do have extensive about 200 plus manufacturing customers, I guess.
So at Dell, we produce these validated designs. Basically what they are is productized solutions. All of our engineers work on these following the same processes we do for hardware and software. And so what we're seeing from a success perspective is that we're completely eliminating the proof of concept time and minimizing this whole purgatory situation where you actually never get out of your proof of concept, because we've designed the architecture end to end, and we did the same thing with Litmus at the end of the day. So we have system integrators that you would think they develop solutions, but they're literally taking our validated designs off the shelf, and they're using those architectures and guidelines and designs to implement the hardware and the software so that it works for their customers faster. And we're deploying to theme parks and many other areas just because of that, just reducing proof of concept time by like 80%.
That's really awesome. I get kind of nervous with all of the newer technologies that are coming out, but it's really exciting too, because it's going to give us a different perspective on different things, not just, you know, all the data from operational technologies and helping us be predictive in nature, but we're going to be able to see things in a whole different perspective. So I just want to thank all of you again for joining us for this panel discussion. It was a really great educational discussion, and we have a couple other sessions that are coming up. Next up, we have Dan King of Textile Solutions and Dave Shook of Uptake, who are going to be shaking things up with their presentation on the value of doing things differently.